government. Now, Debbie, let's move on to health and the UK Health Security Agency.
Yeah, well, on a day when the United Kingdom has no NHS because we don't have any doctors working in the NHS because they're all on strike, I thought I'd focus in on the new UKHSA strategic plan 2023 to 2026. And there you can see her in all her glory, the CEO of the UKHSA, Dame Jenny Harris. Of course, the UKHSA used to be Public Health England, but now we seem to think that it's fused with security. So let's look a little bit more in depth to this report. And again, freeze the screen for the in-depth detail. But basically, we're looking at three pillars there: prepare, respond, and build. So prepare, be ready for future security hazards. They're the first line of defence. They work with the NHS and the One Health agenda. Respond, save lives, reduce harm through effective responses. They also respond to monkeypox, mpox, salmonella, radiation, chemical, environmental hazards, floods. They haven't consulted me with regards to floods, but apparently they're into floods, and also antimicrobial resistance. And then we've got build, to develop the UK's security capacity to build and invest in scientific clinical public health. Now, they're also included in genomics and, of course, Porton Down, a high containment laboratory. So the UKHSA have been very busy. And GB News recently caught up with this story, which seems to show that some of the migrants coming over have been showing signs of illness. So they've been busy erecting biohazard tents at Dover. So the UKHSA has taken up that cause. It's also taken up the cause in Wales, because it says in Wales specifically, we've got soaring cases of gonorrhea. So they're tracking that. They're saying there's an increase of more than 50% compared to 2021. And of course, the UKHSA are international as well. So they are busy tracking and tracing the latest outbreak of fear in India, which is the Nipah virus, which apparently is putting some areas of India into lockdown. But I suggest the UKHSA might want to talk to Professor Chris Whitty, because he's come out and said that, you know, if your child's got a cold, because colds do exist, if they've got respiratory illness, they need to go back to school. So send them back to school. They're better off at school. And I'm sure we all can remember seeing children sitting in circles, social distancing with partitioning. But apparently now, if they've got a mild respiratory illness, it's fine to send them back to school. However, before we all get excited, the UKHSA are warning now that children who have not had 2 doses of MMR, especially in some areas in London, which we'll look at in a minute, they could face 3 weeks isolation if they're unvaccinated. So these children are going to be excluded from school completely. Now, this is 128 cases, 128 cases. And the big reason for this is that the UK has lost its measles eradication status from the WHO. So we've got to get it back quickly. So where are these hotspots that the UKHSA are mapping? Because this is what the UKHSA are doing. They're mapping, and in particular, they're saying that children need this MMR because there could be an outbreak of between 40,000 and 160,000 cases. Which areas of London in particular? Well, the areas that they're busy mapping, apparently the areas at most risk are Hackney, 56% of children inoculated, Kensington, 67%, Camden and Enfield at 68%. So if you live in those particular boroughs, you might just want to keep an eye on what's going on in your school and what your doctor is asking you to take your child for. Now, yesterday was the MHRA board meeting, and I, along with just over 20 members of public, I'm disappointed that it was a smaller number, but some friends of ours were joining, including people from the House of Commons, I might like to add. And chairing the meeting yesterday was Professor Graham Cooke, because as you remember, Stephen Lightfoot has resigned. Now, Graham Cooke has got lots of conflicts of interest, World Health Organization, Imperial College. And yesterday, he announced that he was going to be a member of NERVTAG. And NERVTAG is the new and emerging respiratory virus threats advisory group. And I can tell you now that is a whole new subject which we'll go into. So very quickly, I want to highlight just a couple of things that came up at the MHRA board meeting. It was very poorly chaired, in my honest opinion. Those of us were watching, we were told that if we were rude or they didn't say the word vexatious, but that's what they meant, then we'd be kicked off the meeting. That's not really been said before. Graham Cooke was also quite stern in his introduction. But the revelations around 66, the number 66, so 66 parliamentary questions have been raised about the MHRA in Parliament this year. That's a triple increase from last year where there were only 20. The last board meeting, they had a backlog of clinical trial applications, but miraculously, they've cleared 966 clinical trial application backlogs have been cleared, and now they're fast tracking all the rest. They were talking very much, June Rain was talking very much about regaining the public trust. We don't trust the MHRA. I just want to put it on record there. We don't trust the MHRA, but they're really interested in their own people, recruiting, retaining, doing surveys, psychometric testing. And we had a lady appear that said all the members of the MHRA, all the employees are like lilies on a lily pond, and we have to look after them. So the MHRA are quite clearly listening to each other, but they're not listening to us.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. And you've got a couple of emails here.
Lovely, lovely email. Thank you so much from Jacqueline. After our segment last week on anorexia nervosa, I'm going to be speaking more to Jacqueline in the future, so we can look forward to that. She's 74. She's lived with anorexia all of her life, and she's a complete inspiration. And it doesn't have to be the way the government would like it to be. So keep an eye out for that. Thank you to Jacqueline.
Okay, thank you. Well, you got a bit of a preview of what